Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam to all the Vaishnavas listening to me. Today we will continue from the second question of the chapter, Impersonal Philosophy. Before that, let us offer our prayers at the lotus feet of Srila Gurudev and all our previous acharyas. Om Agyan-Timirandhasya Jnananjana-Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कांता श्री राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तद्कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा वांछा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिंधुभ्यैव च पतितनाम पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Second question, is impersonalism the universal opinion of the Vedas? Where is the birthplace of impersonalism? Answer is, the philosophy called impersonalism has been current since a long time. This is the partial opinion of the Vedas. Although many scholars have preached the philosophy of impersonalism outside India, there is no doubt that this philosophy was spread throughout the world from India. A few scholars came to India with Alexander and carefully learned this philosophy. These scholars then partially preached about this philosophy in their respective books and respective countries. Third question, why are Mayavadis more condemned than the Buddhists? Answer is, since the Lord Buddha opposed Vedic injunction, Vedic Aryans criticized him as an atheist. But Mayavadi's propagation of atheism under the shelter of the Vedas is more dangerous than Buddhism, because an enemy in the guise of a friend is more dangerous than an enemy. Fourth question, are the commentaries of the Mayavadis not opposed to the codes of Vyasadeva? Answer is, factually, the devotional service of the Lord is described in the Vedanta Sutra, but the Mayavadi philosophers prepared a commentary known as Sariraka Bhasya, in which the transcendental form of the Lord is denied. The Mayavadi philosophers think that the living entity is identical with the Supreme Soul Brahman. Their commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra are completely opposed to the principle of devotional service. Fifth question, can the existence of the living entities be illusory? Answer is, the living entities are eternally spiritual. They are not subjected to any bondage or distress. They suffer miseries due to their misconception of identifying the body as the self. Considering the rope as snake and oyster as silver are the two Vedic examples. Mayavadis mistakenly consider the very existence of the living entities as illusory. When a living entity, by the mercy of a bona fide spiritual master, understands these two examples have not been said in regard to the existence of the living entities, rather, they have been said in regard to considering the gross and subtle bodies as self, then he actually finds the real path. Sixth question, how are the Mayavadis offenders at the feet of Krishna? Answer is, a Mayavadi is naturally an offender to Krishna because he says that the form of Krishna, the name of Krishna, and the pastimes of Krishna are all material. The word material means illusory or product of matter. According to the opinion of the Mayavadis, the absolute truth is formless, and without variegatedness. To get the work done, the Absolute Truth takes shelter of illusion and accepts various material forms like Rama or Krishna. The name of the Absolute Truth is Brahman or Paramatma or Chaitanya. The consciousness forms like Rama or Krishna are products of matter. The names like Rama or Krishna are material sound vibration, and the pastimes of Rama and Krishna are also mundane. But the difference between the living entities and Rama or Krishna is that the living entities are forced to accept material bodies as a result of their karma, but Chaitanya or consciousness accepts a material body out of his own sweet will to fulfill his missions in this world, and then gives up his material body again out of his own sweet will. Therefore, the names, forms, and pastimes of Rama or Krishna are certainly material. As long as practitioner does not attain knowledge, he should worship personalities like Rama or Krishna. After attaining knowledge, he no longer needs to chant or meditate on material names and forms of Rama, Krishna, etc. Rather, he should only chant Brahman, Paramatma or Chaitanya. Therefore, the Mayavadis consider the forms of Rama and Krishna to be more abominable than the Absolute Truth. That is why the Mayavadis are the greatest offenders at the feet of Krishna. Seventh question. Is Mayavadi's glorification of Krishna an offense against the chanting of the holy names? Answer is, Mayavadi's glorification to Krishna in the course of their sadhana is also an offense. Pure devotees should not approve their activities like chanting Krishna's name, because in their association one will simply commit namapradha. Even though Mayavadis display various symptoms of ecstatic love, such as shedding of tears or standing of hair on end, these symptoms are not genuine. These are simply a shadow of reflection of transformation of ecstatic love. Hence, these are offenses. Eighth question. Why Mayavadi commentaries and philosophy should not be heard by the devotee? Answer is, even though someone firmly fixed in devotion to Krishna's service might not be deviated by hearing the Mayavada Bhasya, but that Bhasya is nevertheless full of impersonal words and ideas such as Brahman, which represent knowledge but which are impersonal. The Mayavadis say that the world created by Maya is false, and that actually there is no living entity but only one spiritual effulgence. They further say that God is imaginary, that people think of God only because of ignorance, and when the Supreme Absolute Truth is befooled by the external energy Maya, he becomes a jiva or living entity. Upon hearing all these nonsensical ideas from the non-devotee, a devotee is greatly afflicted as if his heart and soul were broken. Ninth question. Where is the origin of godlessness and impersonalism? Answer is, nescience results in adoration of matter, and too much knowledge results in atheism and monism. Adoration of matter has two forms. Positive adoration is to accept material characteristics as knowledge of the Supreme Lord, and negative adoration is to accept material characteristics as the Supreme. Those who engage in positive adoration accept and worship a material image as the Supreme. Those who engage in negative worship accept the negative features of material characteristics as Brahman. Such people conclude that the Supreme is impersonal, without form, without activity, and without senses. 10th question. What is the result of dry argument and too much knowledge? Answer is, therefore, acceptance of the gross from the Supreme as well as acceptance of the impersonal form are both products of nescience and are always contradictory. When reasoning overcomes knowledge and becomes established as argument, then one does not accept the soul as eternal. In this situation, the philosophy of atheism is born. When knowledge comes under the subordination of reasoning and gives up its nature, then one aspires of merging. This aspiration is born from too much knowledge and does not benefit the living entity. 11th question. Is the philosophy of theosophy another form of impersonalism? Answer is, the philosophy of theosophy preached in the countries like America is also impersonalism. Whatever the proud scholars preach, the less intelligent people naturally accept. In our country, many proud scholars like Dattatreya, Astavakra, and Sankara, who were fond of arguments, preached this philosophy from time to time in different shapes. Nowadays, all philosophies other than Vaishnava philosophy are subordinate to that philosophy. 12th question. Are atheism and merging into the existence of Brahman unhealthy symptoms of consciousness? Answer is, after becoming civilized, when a living entity cultivates various knowledge, then he, through his false arguments, covers his faith up to some extent and thereby either accepts atheism or merging into the existence of Brahman. It is to be understood that this clumsy faith is the symptom of an undeveloped, weak consciousness. 13th question. Can too much knowledge or the philosophy of non-difference equate proper reasoning? Answer is, even by proper reasoning, too much knowledge cannot be beneficial. We will now give 4 considerations in this regard. First, if merging with the Supreme Brahman were the living entity's ultimate goal, then we would have to imagine that the Lord, out of cruelty, has created the living entities. If we accept Maya as the sole creator in order to verify Brahman as faultless, then we are bound to accept an independent truth that is separate from Brahman. Second, when a soul merges with Brahman, neither is benefited. Third, in the eternal pastimes of the Absolute Truth, there is no need for souls to merge in Brahman. Fourth, if one does not fully accept the quality of variegatedness, which is the manifestation of the Lord's energies, then there is no possibility of existence, knowledge, or happiness, and as a result, the Supreme Brahman is considered impersonal and without basis. One may even develop doubts about the existence of Brahman. But if one accepts the quality of variegatedness as external, then the soul cannot merge with Brahman. With that, we complete 77th chapter and move on to 78th chapter, which is called Idol Worship. First question. Is it possible to give up deity worship in the course of worshipping the Supreme Lord? Answer is, it is a fact that the Supreme Lord has no material form, but his Satchid Ananda spiritual form is certainly accepted. The full manifestation of the Supreme Lord is not possible in a conditioned soul. Therefore, whatever form of the Supreme Lord is meditated upon by the human beings will certainly be incomplete and thus idol worshipping. Idolatry can be easily rejected by words, but in the process of worshipping the Supreme Lord, it is inevitable. Second question. Has the spiritual form of God been denied in the Muslim literatures? Answer is, Sri Gauranga had instructed Chand Kazi that only material form of God has been denied in the Quran. Pure spiritual form, however, has not been denied. According to his own qualification, the Prophet has seen that the transcendental blissful form Other forms of transcendental melos of the Supreme Lord were covered. Third question. Who are the first class idol worshippers? Answer is uncivilized tribes, the worshippers of the fire god Jove, and people of Greece who worship planets like Saturn are the frontline idol worshippers. Fourth question. Who are the second class idol worshippers? Answer is those who, after scrutinizingly studying material knowledge, accept without reasoning an impersonal image opposed to all material qualities as God. They are the second class of idol worshippers. Fifth question. Who are the third class of idol worshippers? Answer is those whose ultimate goal is to merge into the existence of the Lord, and who imagine that the worship of the qualitative forms of the Lord Vishnu, Shiva, Durga, Ganesha and Surya is the process to achieve that goal, are counted among the third class idol worshippers. They do not accept the eternal form of God, so they worship some imaginary form of God. Nowadays, these people are known as five God worshippers. Sixth question. Who are the fourth class of idol worshippers? Answer is the yogis who meditate on the concocted form of Vishnu are the fourth class of idol worshippers. Seventh question. Who are the fifth class of idol worshippers? Answer is those who worship living entities as God and are the fifth class of idol worshippers. Eighth question. What is the difference between worshipping the spiritual form of the Supreme Lord and idol worship? Answer is there is a great difference between serving the deity of the Lord and worshipping idols. Deity worship is an indicator of the absolute truth, because by this process one attains the absolute truth. Idol worship, however, means to accept a material form or formlessness of the absolute truth, in other words, to accept a material form as the Supreme Lord. Now we complete 78th chapter and start with 79th chapter, which is called the philosophy of synthesis. First question. Is a person who disregards the path of the Mahajanas not a cheater? Answer is you have concluded that the authorized sampradayas are faulty, and so you have become very eager to purify yourself. You did not accept tilaka or tulsi beads. You gave up the trouble of taking initiation and invented your own new system of religion. Second question. What do the harmonizers gossip? How were the modern day Gaurangas chastised? Answer is the same person who was a follower of Vaishnavism 400 years ago has now changed his mind and preached a new philosophy which harmonizes all religious systems. They thought this would be a universal religion. They further said that if one follows a particular type of religion, one could not pursue universal love. By merging all religious systems, universal love for all living entities can be awakened. Last year, Sriman Mahaprabhu has punished them completely. Some of them were removed altogether from this planet, and the rest engaged in quarreling among themselves, and finally took up their respective professions. Only one or two are still trying to pose as Gauranga, but being unable to get any attention from the civilized society, they are finally taking shelter of the cobblers. What a pastime of Mahaprabhu! However, Kali raises his head. Mahaprabhu smashes all his attempts by hitting a stick on his head. Third question. Who are the real Paramahansas and what are their behaviors? Answer is those who have divine eyes consider them equipoised yogis, and those who are less intelligent or third grade people consider them as attached to material enjoyment. Some people may occasionally even consider them averse to the Lord. A swan-like person can identify other swan-like brother who possesses all the appropriate symptoms, whether he is from the same country or not. Although their dress, language, worship, deity and behavior may appear different, they should freely address each other as brother. These types of people are called Paramahamsas, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the scripture that is meant for such Paramahamsas. Fourth question: why are there different behavior and different sadhanas? Answer is: according to one's nature, one accepts his worshipable Lord, suitable shastras and like-minded associates. According to the logic Samasila Bhajanati Vai, or one associates with like-minded persons, various worshipable lords, various sadhanas, various associates and various behavior naturally come into existence in the world. The worshipable Lord is one without a second. Fifth question: is neutrality a principle of devotional service? Can it help manifest one's faith in the absolute truth? Answer is: without developing faith in the eternal absolute truth, a living entity can never achieve any benefit. If everything is good in this world, then what is bad? If whatever one does is good, then where is the distinction between good and bad? Then puffed rice and sugar candy becomes one and the same. If there is no need for a living entity to perform any sadhana, then what is the difference between a debauchee who is attached to prostitutes and a Paramahamsa who is completely free from such desires? The truth and illusion becomes one. Therefore, faith in the absolute truth is supremely beneficial, whereas attachment for temporary objects is abominable. Maintaining neutrality for everything cannot be called good. Rather, one should take side of the good and reject the neutrality. With that, we move on to 80th chapter, which is called Civilization. First question: what is the meaning of the word Sabhyata or civilization? Answer is: the meaning of the word Sabhyata is to become qualified to sit in a sabha or an assembly. That is plain gentlemanliness. Second question: what is the definition of modern civilization? Answer is: the process of covering internal evil is the definition of modern civilization. Third question: how do the cunning people protect their civilization? Answer is: the prestige of cunning people's civilization is protected by their useless arguments and physical strength. Fourth question: is it proper to lose the treasury of devotional service for the sake of insignificant cultivation? Answer is: I used to laugh within my mind seeing the signs of devotional service, as I thought them to be utterly madness. What happened to that civilization which I considered as the topmost, and in trying to praise that civilization, I lost the most valuable touchstone? Fifth question: is the civilization of Kali Yuga not a sinful act? Answer is: if civilization means to simply wear attractive clothes, then the prostitutes are more civilized than you. Wine and flesh are naturally impure. Therefore, civilization that grows by eating such things is certainly sinful. The modern state of civilization is certainly the civilization of the age of Kali. With that, we complete 80th chapter and now move on to 81st chapter, which is called Politics. First question: is present administration not favorable to the worship of Hari? Answer is: may our present Empress Srimati Queen Victoria continue to freely rule over India without any anxiety. May we continue to relish and preach the pure Vaishnava religion without any anxiety under her administration. Second question. How can the friendship between the Englishmen and Indians remain intact? Answer is, friendship between the Englishmen and the Indians is natural. The English people are Aryans and the Indians are also Aryans. Therefore, relationship between them is that of brother. Where is that natural brotherly affection? Because the Englishmen have become our ruler, why should the natural propensity be lost? In relationship, the Indians are elder brothers and the Englishmen are younger brothers. When the younger brother becomes matured and competent and takes the responsibility of the family, the elder brother at that time is old and therefore weak. Therefore, he lovingly accepts the subordination of his younger brother. What is wrong with this? When we were young, we also displayed our authority over other castes. Now, due to old age, we are incapable. Therefore, what could be more pleasing than spending our lives under the care of our younger brothers? What could be more fortunate than blessing our younger brothers and relishing the nectar from the ever blissful lotus feet of Hari constantly? The younger brothers will always protect us from all kinds of disturbances. We no longer have to go under miseries in the battlefield. We will sit at home and chant the holy names of Hari. If while working hard for the family, the younger brothers sometimes become dissatisfied and display anger, then we as elder brothers will tolerate it and make them happy by our sweet words and affectionate dealings. In this way, we will command their respect. We will not fail to commit monetary help to the best of our ability to our younger brothers, if they ever require such help in the course of fulfilling their familial duties. We will follow the same procedure for showing affection a well-to-do pious householder would show to his younger brother. We will never display any opposition. O my national brothers, this is my advice to you. Please act in this way. Third question. Is it possible to attain peace and prosperity in human life if there is enmity between the Indians and the Englishmen? Answer is, I appeal to both the Englishmen who are endowed with good qualities and power and my fellow Indians. O brothers, give up enmity. There is no profit from enmity. If you give up aversion, then my well-known Shanti Devi, or the goddess of peace, will award you happiness. Everyone is hankering after happiness. Obtain happiness in the shelter of goddess of peace. Originally, all human beings are brothers. The Supreme Personality of Godhead does not become pleased by your mutual aversion to each other. You all are spirit souls. We all are always afflicted by various miseries, accidents, and scarcities. If we maintain universal brotherhood, we can decrease our miseries up to some extent. But mutual cooperation, fulfillment of scarcities, and by joint effort, natural calamities can be taken care of. If we oppose each other in such a situation, then there is no hope for mitigating the miseries. The happiness leaves the world forever. Therefore, O brothers, give up envy, hatred, and false ego, and love each other. Fourth question. Can the former glory of Indians be protected even if they refrain from war? Answer is, even though due to old age the Indians retire from activities like war, they nevertheless lived happily by acting like instructors of other castes. Fifth question. What kind of war is approved by the religious scriptures? Answer is, all wars to expand one's kingdom are unlawful and harmful to the world. No war other than extremely legitimate war has been recommended in the religious scriptures. With that, we finish 81st chapter and now start 82nd chapter, which is called Sociology. First question: why is the system of Varnashrama appreciated? Answer is, in order to maintain social order, the Aryans divided society into 4 castes and 4 social orders. If the social system is protected, then good association and discussion nourish people's spiritual lives. Therefore, the Varnashrama system should be accepted in all respects. By this arrangement, there is a possibility of gradually attaining love for Krishna. The main purpose of this arrangement is the cultivation of spiritual life or love for Krishna. Second question: is there a possibility of any auspiciousness if a conditioned soul transgresses the principles of Varnashrama? Answer is, those who have sufficiently studied sociology certainly conclude that the system of Varnashrama is the topmost social system. If one is situated in the principle of Varnashrama, then his nature cannot be lost. Rather, one can receive huge opportunity and advantage to cultivate Krishna consciousness. Varnashrama Dharma is the society of Vaishnavas in their conditional state. Third question: can there be any civilized society without the principles of Varnashrama? Answer is, mercantile communities of Europe love to do business and they prosper from business. Those whose nature is like that of the Kshatriyas pick up the military lines or activities of the army, and those whose nature is like that of Shudras engage in ordinary services. Actually, unless some extent of Varnashrama Dharma is followed, a society cannot run. Superior or inferior statuses and nature is tested in the act of marriage based on Varnashrama principles. Even though the principles of Varnashrama Dharma have been established up to some extent in the societies of Europe, they have not taken full shape scientifically. Fourth question: what kind of sociology is followed before the excellent improvement of the Varnashrama system? Answer is, as until the ships were invented through scientific process, voyages used to be conducted by simple boats made through unscientific process. In the same way, until the system of Varnashrama was fully implemented in a country, an unscientific state of previous existence continued to run the society. This unscientific state of previous existence has become the director of the societies in Europe and everywhere except India. Fifth question: what is the difference between a Vaishnava society and a non-Vaishnava society? Answer is, the difference between a Vaishnava society and a non-Vaishnava society is that the ultimate goal of the Vaishnava society is love of God, and the goal of non-Vaishnava society is selfish lust. Those who are situated in the ordinary society consider the nourishment of the body, sense gratification, following worldly moralities, discovering objects that enhance their sense gratification by cultivating material knowledge, and the activities of temporarily stopping the material miseries and the society's ultimate goal. Among them, some praise the happiness after death, some praise the heavenly enjoyment, and some praise the state of merging into the existence of the Lord. The living entities who are situated in the Vaishnava society utilize nourishment of the body, sense gratification, following worldly moralities, science, and rejection of material happiness as means to favorably cultivate Krishna consciousness. The shape of both Vaishnava society and non-Vaishnava society is one, but its characteristics are different. Sixth question: by following which rules can the Varnashrama system of India be revived? Answer is, In order to revive the principles of Varnashrama, the following few rules have to be reintroduced. First, no one's caste should be ascertained simply by birth. Second, a person's caste should be determined according to the nature he develops in the association of the children and by the accumulation of knowledge. Third, at the time of ascertaining a person's caste, one should, along with that person's nature and taste, consider the caste of his parents. Fourth, after a person becomes matured, in other words, when he becomes 15 years old, the family priest, the landlord, the parents, and a few selfless educated people of the village should sit together and determine his caste. Fifth, which caste should a matured person belongs? Such a question should never arise. Rather, the question should be raised whether that matured person is qualified to retain his father's caste or not. Sixth question, if it is found that a person is qualified to retain his caste, then appropriate samskara or purificatory rituals should be performed. If it is seen that he is qualified for a higher caste, then his samskara should be performed accordingly. If it is found that he is qualified for a caste lower than that of his father, then he should be given 2 more years. Seventh point, after this additional 2 years, he should be examined again and his caste should be ascertained. Eighth, every village should have a committee consisting of landlords and the scholars to protect the rules and regulations of the society. Ninth, the support of the king has to be taken in order to keep these activities going. The king is actually the protector of the principles of Varnashrama. 10th, according to one's caste, one's marriage and other activities should be carried out. 7th question, how many types of societies are there? Can the living entities ever remain out of society? Answer is, some people think that social people cannot be called Vaishnavas. This is a misconception. Actually, the society is divided into 3, namely the society of the materialist, the society of those who desire liberation, and the society of liberated souls. The living entities can never become unsocial. Sociability is their nature. Even when the living entities are free from matter, a pure society of devotees is inevitable. Therefore, whether a living entity lives in the forest or lives at home or lives in Vaikuntha, he is always a social creature. The difference between the Vaishnavas and ordinary living entities is that the Vaishnavas live in a Vaishnava society and the ordinary living entities live in an ordinary society. The conclusion now is that there is no difference between Vaishnava religion and Vaishnava society. 8th question, what kind of social etiquette is beneficial for India? Is it proper to take up the activity of reforming the society in haste? Answer is, there is danger in both sides. On one side, the insect of prejudice is eating away our society. If we simply keep quiet, we will certainly invite inauspiciousness. Our social strength, heroism, and good fortune are gradually diminishing. Those same descendants of the Aryans, by whose influence the entire world remained shaking for a long time, have now become lower than the Mlechas and gradually becoming even more degraded. Those who have good hearts are lamenting while discussing these topics. Those who do not have good hearts are living without any anxiety and are gradually become degraded. If we glance on the other side, we find various dangers. If we give up the system of Varnashrama and establish a new society, then we can no longer be called Aryans, because a scientific society ceases to remain. For example, societies like Buddhism, Jainism, local Christianity, and Brahmo Samaj, who are devoid of the principle of Varnashrama, never prospered in the land of India. Buddhism and Jainism remained hidden in the caves. The local Christianity only remained in the possession of the mlechas. Brahmo Samaj became locked in the cottage. None of them could lead a life of independence. What happened to the tantras of the Buddhists? What happened to the newly formed rules and regulations? They were all useless. They will never be of any use to India, which is the abode of the science. If we suddenly begin to reform the society and try to establish the principles of Varnashrama, then there will be a big chaos. We can see darkness in all directions. With that, we complete 82nd chapter. We'll continue from the 83rd chapter in the next session. My sincere obeisances at the lotus feet of Srila Gurudev and the divine couple Sri Sri Radha Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.